In our previous episodes, we talk about the people we have never known, but are responsible for our existence, especially in this place and time. We looked at Mr. Fiddler's ancestors, who first immigrated to the United States, and we looked at where they settled and what their livelihoods were. Much of what Mr. Fiddler knows about these relatives he learned in books and archives when he first set out on his genealogy quest. Much of what he knows is just the facts: when they were born, who they married, how many children they had, what their trade was, and when they died. All of this is useful information, but it lacks zest and wonder. Today, I want to explore the generation that came before him, that of his grandparents and his aunts and uncles, to see what we might unearth about the Fiddler family. I'm Marley, the co-host of this podcast, and I'm sitting here with the ping jockey himself, Mr. Kenneth H. Fiddler. So, Mr. Fiddler, we've been talking a lot about your ancestors who immigrated to the United States, but I'm curious about your ancestors who put down roots here and, were second generation. Did you have a close relationship with your grandparents?
No, I never met either of them because my mother had children when she was 42, and when I was born, they were already dead. But my brother was 7 years older than me, and I have a picture of our grandmother holding him as a little baby.
Oh, wow.
But I never seen any of them.
So you never got to meet them, but I'm sure you've heard stories or know a few things about what they did and what they were like.
Yeah, my Aunt Ida used to tell me. My grandfather was a carpenter, and when they moved to the new house on I forget where, I went there so much. But when they moved to that new home.
On Cedar Street?
Huh?
On Cedar Street?
After that.
Oh.
Greenwich Street.
Okay.
And they moved there, and they were there. They all died from there. And as I was a little boy, I used to visit Aunt Lily and Aunt Ida very much. I used to visit all of them, but most of the men never even talked to me.
Huh.
They were too talkative.
You mean too busy? Or not talkative?
Well, most of the time they weren't there. Once in a while, Uncle Milt was there, and I did ask him a few questions because I think Aunt Lily had told me that he had traveled to the coast, hitchhiking across all the way to the Pacific.
Wow.
And I asked him about it, and I don't remember all he said. He did explain to me a little bit about it.
But he hitchhiked all the way out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Uncle Will, he was hardly ever around because he was always working. And the most I ever talked to him was after everybody died, and he was the last one, and he was living there alone when he was about 96 years old. And I was living up on Paris Street, and I felt like I better check in on him once in a while. And every couple of weeks I'd stop by, and I'd knock on the door, and he'd let me in. And he was always sitting at the library table, reading the newspaper, smoking a cigar.
At 96?
At 96. And he was never allowed to smoke in the house the whole time. But everybody's gone now. He's doing what he wanted.
I think this sounds like somebody that inspired you a little bit.
A little bit. And I'd see how he was. And then I'd get down in the basement and check the stove to see everything was working all right. And I'd check on it sometimes like that until he died.
And how long did he live?
Well, I guess when I was visiting, he died at 96.
Okay.
So he might have been a year or so younger at
that time.
Yeah.
And didn't he give you a really good piece of advice? Didn't he give you a very good piece of advice?
Yeah, he did.
What was that?
A lot of people used to ask him what he contributed to his old age. he said, always keep moving. That'll do it.
Always keep moving, and you're really a testament to that philosophy.
And he worked for the Red Cross for, I think, 32 years. And they had their place almost all the way in town. And he'd walk in there in the morning. He'd walk home at lunchtime and back in. He did a lot of walking.
Wow, he did 4 trips in one day every day for 33 years.
Yeah.
They don't make them like that anymore.
And my Aunt Ida, who was about 4 feet 6 inches or less, she was really little. And she went to St. Matthew's Church in the beginning. But then she found out they were setting up a new Lutheran church in Glenside. And she went over there and offered to be a teacher. For all those years that she worked there, she always walked from Greenwich Street. Even just to get to Schuylkill Bridge is a walk, and across a bridge and over to Glenside every Sunday.
And a little lady like that, 4'6", wow, she really had to...
And I remember one time, she told me, when they had the trolleys, sometimes when she went in town, she would take a trolley. But the trolleys had such big steps, and she could hardly step on those. They almost had to pull her up. And she complained, your steps are too high. And the guy said to her, maybe you're just too little.
Oh, wow. Yep, I guess there's pluses and minuses to being tall and short. Wow. So you had a really pretty solid relationship with a lot of your aunts and uncles, and I know you spent some considerable time with Ida and Lily. Do you have any other stories about them? What did they do?
Yeah, well, and Ida worked at Meinig's. I think they made gloves. And that's what she did. And they were, I'd say, about 5 or 6 blocks from where they lived. And Aunt Lily never worked any place. She was the homekeeper. She was the one that did all the cooking and the cleaning and marketing. And every Tuesday, she'd go to market. And I'd walk to their house and with my wagon, and I go to market with her and haul the stuff home. And that's when I seen a lot of times there were kids there with wagons, and when women would come out, they'd offer to haul their stuff home for some money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I told Nevin Miller about it. And he said, well, let's try it. And so the next Tuesday we went in early to be first there. And we were getting some people we could haul their stuff home.
Were the other kids mad about the new competition?
They got a little mad about it, but they didn't do anything about it.
Oh, man.
But before that, I used to haul the stuff back with my wagon. And then I'd go home in time to go to school, grade school, at Schuylkill Avenue in Greenwich, which was halfway
in between.
Yeah. So I did a lot of walking too.
I'll say, and walking with your dad.
And then I got a magazine route, and they would drop all these different magazines off at the house. And on Tuesdays, I don't know why it's always Tuesday, but on Tuesday, classes in school, they left us out an hour early, which meant I could get home, load up the magazines in 2 bags, and there were Saturday Evening Post, the Journal, all different ones. and pull 2 bags, hang them on my shoulder with one going this way and one going that way, and walking all the way in town.
That probably gives you good posture.
That
probably gives you good posture.
It gave me something. Gave me a sore back.
Gave you a bad back.
And, but fortunately, when I walked in town, when I almost got into town, they had a big building, an office building. It was about 12 stories. And I had a lot of customers in there. I could get in there and go up the elevator and get rid of a lot of the magazines. And then from there, I had to walk up through town to different stores. And by the end of the day, I was on the other side of Reading. And sometimes I'd walk home, but by that time I'm too tired. And for 7 cents, I could get in the trolley to go home. And especially when it was raining.
Yeah, I would have made that decision as well. For 7 cents, it was worth it. Every penny.
And then I got paper route.
Yeah.
And that kept me a little busy, too.
Yeah, and that provided some interesting opportunities. I'm curious, now, did your aunts and uncles all live in the same house together?
All 4 of them.
Uh-huh.
Ever since they moved there. And none of them ever got married.
So none of them got married, and one lived to 96, and how old did your aunts live till?
We could figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think Lily was about 85. I think
she was 80.
I think they were all in their 80s.
She was 80, yeah. I think they were in their 80s from what I can tell.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. So the 4 of them lived together, but there were 2 other siblings? How many siblings were there all together?
Well, it was those 4, and then it was my father, and then Calvin.
Calvin.
He's the one that had 7 or 8 children. He was the next youngest.
Okay. And I think you have now tell me, how long did the 2 that got married live?
Well, they died younger. My father was only 56, and I think Calvin he was still in his 50s or maybe close to 60, but I think my father was the youngest, and then it was Calvin, a year or so of difference. So they were both pretty young, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what interesting discovery did you come across, or conclusion you reached?
After doing all this, I realized that after all those people lived so long, my father and Uncle Cal that had got married, they had all the children, they died first. Why was that?
I don't know. They must have been trying to get away with something. Away from something.
I guess that was a little bit more responsibility, especially Calvin, with 7 or 8 children. That kept you a little busy. Mm. And in doing my genealogy, I even found out that when Calvin and Minerva, his wife was Minerva, when they first were married, and I guess when they had maybe their first 1 or 2 children, they lived on Pear Street.
Ah.
About 3-4 doors down from where we eventually moved. We didn't move there that early, but they had lived on Pear Street too.
You know,
that's a nice thing about doing genealogy. Sometimes you find some surprising things. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes you open the wrong closet.
That's true. I mean, that's life in general, but genealogy definitely, you can learn some things you never expected to learn about your family. I am curious, though. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your brother, Raymond. I don't think we haven't talked about him too much in our early series or in this.
Well, first of all, you know the story of when my father died. I was there talking to him when he died. Mm-hmm. And I was only 16. And right away I ran all the way in the church because my brother was there to the church service. And I ran in there and crying all the way in. And I told him what happened. Later, every Sunday, he and I would walk when we lived on Windsor Street yet. We'd walk all the way into Greenwich Street, pick up Aunt Lily, walk into St. Matthew's Church, which is almost in the town. And then we'd walk back and drop Aunt Lily off and then walk all the way to Windsor Street. So it seems like my life was always walking.
Yeah, walking a path.
Yeah. So we did that a lot. And then my brother decided to he got a job at Muller's drugstore. But he also, my father was unemployed. And my brother thought maybe he could figure out a way to get him a job. Got the idea that maybe a fellow that he went to school with, his father was a baker. And he found out that if he started selling baked stuff, he could get them cheap from his father. And I had a wagon. So he built a big case that he could sit right in my wagon. And it was really a nice thing with glass windows and doors and everything and shelves. And he could get all that food. I think they used to even deliver the bacon to our house.
Wow.
And then he just threw it in there. And then he towed it with a bicycle all around town, selling baked stuff. And he was hoping that my father could do that. But just about that time, my father had a nervous breakdown, and he couldn't do anything like that. He kept doing it himself, and it got to be pretty big job. So he decided to buy a car, and he bought a 1929 Ford.
How much did that run?
I think he paid $25 for it, and he got it cheap because it was an oil. It used a lot of oil, but when he drive it, he just stopped by a lot of the old garages. When they were servicing cars, they drained the old oil out, and he'd get that old oil and use it in his Ford.
Oh my gosh! Your brother was quite a thrifty and smart guy.
You had to be.
Yeah.
He was almost after my father died. Why he was
taking the man of the house.
Yeah, and.
I'm just impressed with how thrifty he was.
And then that's how he got me the paper route.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He needed to make sure you stayed out of trouble.
Yeah, and then I borrowed his bicycle for a while till I could buy one. And then it was a big paper route.
I think, so you were in the service, you were drafted, and I understand that your brother was in the service too. Now, did he enlist?
He enlisted about almost, I'd say maybe 3/4 a year. He had found out that he could enlist, and he'd have to go to school in Pittsburgh to learn about, I think it was radar, and that was something new, and he thought it'd be a good thing to learn. And so he was doing that, and it was, for that time, it was just going to school. But about the time I got drafted, he was in the service by then, and he was, I think he was stationed down in North Carolina and a couple of states down there. But once I was in on a ship, and about that time, he was doing pretty good, and he was signing up to go to officers training school. But then he found out that my ship was heading for North Africa, and he didn't like that, and so he stopped. He didn't want to go to officers training school. He said, "Send me over there."
Wow.
And they did.
And you know, a history of service has been in your family for a while. You had a cousin that was also serving?
Yeah, my cousin John was in the Army. And he was sent over in France. And I'm not sure where he went first, but I know he was in France. And near the end of the war, my brother got transferred from where he was. He was most of the time in England, and since he learned radar, the radar over there were controlling the guns. When the German planes come in, the radar picked up the guns to point at the planes, and that's what he was doing. And but eventually, I guess near the end of the war, he got transferred to Paris. And when he got off the truck there, right there was John. And John said, "What the hell are you doing here?"
And what did Ray say? Could ask you the same question. Well, that's pretty cool.
But they were always good buddies growing up. They were almost the same age.
Yeah.
And a lot of things we used to do together in church. We sang both of us sang in the choir, and John did too. And after the choir, we would walk. The three of us would walk from the church all the way out Center Avenue and Fifth Street. He lived way out there on Fifth Street. And we'd walk out there till we got to Window Street, and he went straight, and we went this way to our house. So we did things together then already. And that was way before we were in the service.
Yeah. Your ancestry has been such a big deal to you, and you doing that, you know, you're doing your genealogy really kept you focused on your family. But I also find it interesting that you had 2 children and the line stopped there.
Yeah. And for some reason, I think that might be because they went to college. I didn't.
So you think higher education?
And they went to college and got real good jobs, and they were too busy. They weren't interested in having any children. That would slow them down, and that's what happened. They have other things to do.
I think
no grandchildren.
No, but you know what? I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's some real insight.
I think that's about it.
I think that's some real insight. That's an incredible connection you made there.
Is that fit to print?
I think it is. But little did you know that you wouldn't have any biological grandchildren, but you would find me down the road one day, and I'm a good substitute, I think. So your story didn't stop with your children because we've been able to share it with the world.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing here. It's really been such a treat. Well, it's about that time again. I'm Marley, the co-host of this podcast, and I'm signing off with the Ping Jockey.
Bye-bye.